Hey guys, so I'm Tim. I've grown up in a Christian home, really been coming to New Song for the last 10 years. Being a Christian really hasn't been a struggle for me other than just the daily walk. Really, what the struggle has been is what is God's will for my life. I've gone from everything from wanting to be a youth pastor going to APU playing football to wanting to be a pastor, graduate with a doctorate, start my own church by the time I'm 30. And I've even had a conversation with Jim about moving to Africa and just never coming back. And that kind of came from I went on a mission trip to Africa in 2010, and then again in 2012, and at the end of 2012 I went to Israel. And so the same feelings kind of happened with Israel, especially with the person who was in charge of Israel, the Israel Today Ministries that I went with, offered me a job. Basically, after I get a bachelor's or a master's degree, he said, "You can come work for me." And so I thought about that, and I prayed about that, and I prayed about a lot of things. And really, in the last couple of months, the only thing that's really spoken to me is the same question I have been asked since I was probably in diapers and could start talking, and that is, do you want to be a cop like your dad? And my answer for a while was yeah. And then once I started feeling like I wanted to do ministry, my answer became no, I'm going to be a pastor. It kind of shook it off. Since October, I've been working towards becoming a police officer. And you may ask, but how can you do ministry and be a police officer? I look at my dad, because he's done it for the last 20 plus years. And basically what he does, because he was a pastor before this and he's ordained and all that stuff and working on his doctorate, first thing he does when he walks into a home for a domestic whatever dispute is while his partner or someone is talking to the family, he starts looking for a Bible. And once he finds that Bible, he picks it up, asks, who does this belong to? And when the person answers, it's mine, he goes, do you read this? The person says maybe, or yes, or whatever, or we just have it. And then he starts to preach to them from the Bible, starts quoting verses from them, and then invites them to whatever church, just says go to church. His partner, whenever he picks up a Bible, always rolls his eyes or looks at him funny. But all of his guys know he does this. And this is how I found out he did it, is I was told by one of his officers. And that's really my inspiration. That's where God's will has really worked in my life, is I've had a police officer pastor for my dad for the last 21 years, and that's what I want to do, and I feel like that's where God wants me, and as a police officer. And as long as I'm working, in Colossians 3, it says, whatever you do for the will of God. And that's what I plan to do, is be in God's ways in order to be a police officer.